While this entire series started as a way for me to play all five of the mainline Elder Scrolls games and test whether or not I was a big fan of all of the Elder Scrolls games or Elder Scrolls as a series as a whole, as opposed to being just a fan of Skyrim, I think that one of the most important distinctions to make is that a lot of Elder Scrolls fans start their love of the series at Morrowind. Arena and Daggerfall aren't bad games, although I can see how you might get the impression that I think that they are from my two videos on them. Arena and Daggerfall are more of side projects. They are outdated messes that are just completely unrelenting, but I don't think they're bad. I think they're a showcase of the time period, and that's not necessarily a crime. But when it comes to asking Elder Scrolls fans what their favorite game is, most of the time you'll hear Oblivion or Morrowind. And Morrowind is where everything started. So a lot of people might ask me, and have asked me, especially over the past week before I've recorded this, whether or not I've been enjoying Morrowind. And the answer to that is, I'm sorry I couldn't hear you. I was too busy playing Morrowind. Hi, my name is Kaiser, and on this channel I do video game reviews, rants, and retrospectives. And if that's something that interests you, then please click that subscribe button down below, as I'm trying to hit 10,000 by the end of 2024. And welcome to my Elder Scrolls Journey project. This is a series that I'm doing here on YouTube where I play through all five of the mainline Elder Scrolls games to find out if I'm only a fan of Skyrim or if I'm a fan of the series as a whole, as up until this point I had never played Elder Scrolls Arena, Daggerfall, Oblivion, or Morrowind. And so today, obviously, we're going over Morrowind. Before we get into the video, I do want to give a quick thank you to all of my channel members listed on the screen now. If you're interested in becoming a channel member for as little as $2 a month, then please check that join button down below. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoy the video, and let's get into the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Chapter 1, The Differences. In the 6-year span between Daggerfall and Morrowind, there have been two major players to rise to the top. First off, our beloved Lord and Savior, the great Todd Howard, became lead of the project, but also our one true god, Michael Kirkbride, was the lead story writer. Kirkbride is responsible for virtually every lore beat from Morrowind onward before departing the company between Oblivion and Skyrim's release, being a consultant for Skyrim's lore. Elder Scrolls 6 will most likely not have any input from him, but we will cross that bridge in 30 years when ES6 finally fucking releases. With these two figures, Morrowind becomes the beginning of what we would soon learn the Elder Scrolls to be, from a choppy, outdated, procedurally generated dungeon crawler to an open, handcrafted world full of love, charm, and most of all, fun and fair. Morrowind is the first in the Elder Scrolls series to be handcrafted, and this turned out to be the right direction for the series. Now, when you go into the wilderness, there is a goal, a path you can take, either to make it to the next town or to find a dungeon with loot at the end of it. Important or powerful items can now be placed in specific areas, and the world feels more alive because of it. Procedural generation works for something like Minecraft, where the goal in Minecraft is to create your own goal. Procedural generation is there to help each playthrough feel fresh and exciting. But for RPG adventure games, the thing that makes each playthrough feel fresh is the different character builds. We need worlds with structure because our classes, race, and skill combinations will vary with each playthrough. Offline, I've been replaying Arena and Daggerfall for short 1-hour bursts, trying to be sure I haven't missed anything I want to talk about. And honestly, no, I haven't, because even with the procedural generation, Arena and Daggerfall both play the same every time, because the only acceptable option in both of them is dungeon diving and dungeon diving to the best of your abilities. You can't play sneaky stealth assassin characters or powerful ranger archers. You can't be an unarmored monk or some sort of magical-based buffer. Everything has to be basically a paladin or a spell sword. You need the close range combat and heavy armor to survive most close combat encounters, but you also need magic to cheese your way through some of the more bullshit pieces of both games. Sure, in Daggerfall, you can become a member of the Thieves Guild, but why would you want to? You can become a member of the Knightly Order, but why would you want to? You can join a whole bunch of factions and try to build an alternate life outside of dungeon diving in the main quest, but why would you want to? This is, in my opinion, the main difference when coming from Arena and Daggerfall to Morrowind through Skyrim. The reason I became a member of the different guilds is to form a connection and build a story for my character. The original plan was to do 3 playthroughs of Morrowind. My first one was Darrow II, a Khajiit assassin who, after being released from prison, which she was in for killing her father, sought out a place of belonging in this new foreign alien land. After moving through the streets of Vivec, she heard about a legal assassins guild and went to join the Morag Tong. She did many jobs for them, rose through the ranks, and became attached to her guildmates. When the time came to slay the Night Mother of the opposing faction, the Dark Brotherhood, Darrow Draw was nearly killed by the powerful Daedra who guarded the woman. After hearing whispers of a cuirass that would protect her from magical blows, she joined the Thieves Guild in order to get the skills to steal it. After rising to the rank of Guildmaster, she snuck into the Hall of Tel Fear, stole Hircine's cuirass from under the nose of an arrogant Dunmer mage, and went off to slay the Night Mother. After she returned, her Guildmaster retired, naming her the leader of the Morag Tong. Together with her Thieves Guild, Darrow Draw would rule the underground crime syndicates in Morrowind, and she would eventually work her way up into one of the great houses to have friends in high places to help her and her guildmates get away with it. After doing this playthrough, I knew all I needed to know. I was originally planning to do a warrior arc and an Argonian mage, and I will down the road, no doubt, because this game is just amazing from top to bottom. I knew once I finished Darrow Draw's story that I had what I needed to write this review. You see, this is the reason you join guilds, to build a story for your characters. Guilds and factions in RPGs shouldn't exist just because that's where your character can go if they want to. They need a purpose to the character's identity. Daggerfall felt like you just joined guilds to join them. In Morrowind, the guild members talk to you differently as you progress. They bring you in and treat you more and more like family. Your ranks actually mean something, and there's a level of kind of connection that you make after you join each of them and become more and more engrossed with what's going on. On top of that, because there's a lack of procedural RNG generation within every single character in the game, you can also get to know the characters and learn more about them. There's no more of this trying to just talk to every NPC and ask them where something is. Every NPC has a story, but I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Chapter 2! Fucking cliff racers! If you've watched even one Skyrim analysis video, you will no doubt at some point hear the person complain about the fast travel and quest markers, and while I think that the subject of those two things requires its own video, I do want to give a brief opinion here. Quest markers are great for general locations, not pinpoint objectives. Although there were multiple times I had to Google the location of an item because I swear I'd turn things upside down, search every nook and cranny, just to not find what I was looking for. But on the other hand, getting journal descriptions and having to find your way around like you actually got a brain and shit is really fun. For fast travel, there are some options, and thank fuck, because I had a character with 74 speed and she still moved at a fucking snail's pace. Getting from place to place, hell, even getting places in the same city was so dull at times I had to start making up songs to keep my chat entertained. Tell everybody I'm on my way, hopping into these bitches' DM. Dancing in the moonlight, everybody don't forget to fight your fucking friends. Especially when one of them cheats on you. I jump till I can no longer do it, and I just realized the rhyme would have been till I no longer can, but it's too late because I'm already singing this song. Most of these were done while navigating fucking Vivec, a surprisingly small-scale city that makes it impossible to get anywhere without having to traverse arbitrary bridges and on weird-ass grid patterns. Finding anything in these smaller sections, called cantons, was sometimes such an astronomical bitch and a half, as doorways would be hidden in random corridors, and sometimes a place would only be accessible if you went through one door but not the other. For example, if you want to go join the Morag Tong, you need to go through the canal works in the arena's canton, and go to the storage area where you'll eventually find a locked trap door leading you to the headquarters. However, if you attempt to go in the wrong door leading outside of the canal works, it won't be there. You have to go to the other side and enter a different door marked canal works, where you will get to where you need to be. Darn all the days of asking every NPC for directions to things. While some NPCs will tell you where you can find people and places, not all of them will, and some of them don't even have the option to do so. What's truly annoying, however, is the directions. When a quest location is not a city, NPCs will give you directions from and within a city, and when I say directions, I mean actual no-shit directions. Head north until you see the steps, then west, and after you find the funny rock that kind of looks like Tobey Maguire, you'll bank south before going northeast just a bit and if you hit the Dunmer Donut Shop, you've gone a bit too far. It's both oddly specific and incredibly convoluted at the same time. My main saving grace being that every important piece of information is auto-logged into your journal, and you'll be checking that fucking thing a lot. But sometimes the directions aren't clear at all. One time I was told to head north from a city until I reached a large rock and the branch banked southeast, and then head east. The problem there is there's so many fucking large rocks, and I have no idea what they meant by the branch bank southeast, that I had no unearthly idea what the fucking hell they meant. I googled the location of things so many times in this game because sometimes it's just so convoluted it's not fair. While I enjoy the detective-esque work of a lot of the journal entries and quest directions and even exploration of the game, I think sometimes they needed to do a big overhaul and proofreading of some of these things because it just doesn't make sense at times. It expects the player to be able to imagine things that they wouldn't be able to imagine in any other scenario, and I believe that something would have been really well done if they would have added like some sketches or photographs of places, but that's just nitpicking at this point. Finally, let's address the fast travel systems and exploration/traversal in the game overall. I've often heard talks that Morrowind's map is huge, but I have no idea what y'all are smoking. Morrowind's map is tiny compared to most open world games that I know of. It only feels big because of how slow your character walks, and the draw distance being not quite that great. Better than Arena and Daggerfall's nearsighted nonsense, but still quite small nonetheless. Never fear, however, traversal between cities and towns has several options, but sometimes options are unavailable or even convoluted. You can use the Mages Guild to teleport to places, but only to other places with a Mages Guild in them. Silt Striders are great for land traversal, but only to cities that have a Silt Strider platform, and even then, you can't skip over cities. So for example, if you wanted to take a Silt Strider from Vivec to Margah, then you would first have to take it from Vivec to Balmora, and then Balmora to Margah. A similar thing happens with boats. Boats can be hired to take you to other towns with ports, but you are still forced to make pit stops. I don't know if these pit stops are there for technical reasons or realism, but either way it can get a tad confusing at times. And sometimes a city might have a port, but you still can't get a boat to and from it. A great example of this is the Tel Fear Tower. There's a very obvious boat that looks like it should have a dock worker on hand, but there's no dock worker and you can't commandeer boats, which I thought was kind of an odd limitation, but then again, I don't know what game development was like back in 2002, so I couldn't really tell you what the technical limitations of the time were. I don't actually mind all of this, though. I think it's a great solution to fast travel problems, and it does help the world feel big. However, when I am forced to go to a place that isn't in a city, I long for a horse or other mount of some sort. I did end up completely missing horses in Daggerfall, so maybe there is also one in Morrowind, but I'll figure that out on my next playthrough. Hey, Postscript Kaiser here. I just wanted to let you guys know that I have been playing this game offline now for about 3 days since writing this script, and I still haven't found any semblance of a mount. I haven't Googled it, mind you. I've been trying to talk to every NPC I can and explore places I can. So if there is a mount system in Morrowind and I just completely overlooked it and can't find it, I don't know if that means I'm stupid or that's just a poor implementation of the mechanic, but I will talk about that in another video if it ever comes up again. The thing is, traversing the wilds is rough. A quick tip, get the mark and recall spells. They are incredibly cheap and have saved my life more than once. I'm dead, 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 I'm so dead, I'm so dead. Oh! Every character needs these spells. Basically, you can mark a spot on the map, and then from literally anywhere, you can use the recall and go right back to that spot. It is amazing. And while it won't let you go to places, it is great for quest lines. I usually marked right in front of whatever faction leader I was doing quests for at the time, and it helped me kind of streamline the quest, which was nice. I also think that it's just incredibly a great tool overall, and I'm really sad that later games don't have it, and I'm hoping that Elder Scrolls 6 brings it back. But anyway, as I was saying, traversing the wilderness can be cool at times. The landscapes are beautiful and foreign. It's so alien-like and really interesting. Creatures aren't typical and are really interesting to see. However, if for whatever reason, find yourself underleveled or undergeared and you are too far out in the wilderness, you will die. And depending on how often you save, you can actually end up soft-locking yourself in a constant death loop. And why is that, you may ask? Mother fucking cliff racers. These pterodactyl-looking shits are the single most annoying enemy I have ever seen in any game ever. They make an ungodly amount of noise, will spawn quite literally out of nowhere to harass you, and sometimes you're fighting 3 to 5 of them. Taking a leisurely stroll? Cliff Racer. Fighting a bandit? Cliff Racer. Just finished a difficult fight and need to rest? Cliff Racer. Taking a shit in a public bathroom? Look through the gap in the stall, there's a Cliff Racer. Fighting a Cliff Racer? More fucking Cliff Racers! These things are single-handedly make traveling the wilderness a fucking pain in the ass. Even later on, when I was high enough level with good enough gear to dispatch them rather quickly, I still hated them because I couldn't go anywhere where they wouldn't attack me. Sometimes I would be just moments from walking into a town or be about to enter something that I wanted to enter, and all of a sudden I just couldn't move and my camera would start flashing back and forth as I had to turn around and deal with yet another fucking problem. And a lot of times you would start fighting these things just for more to show up out of nowhere. They're a complete and utter waste of time. They're not some sort of hazard out in the wilderness to stop your traversal or slow you down or be a challenge. They're just a thorn in your fucking side. And I couldn't escape them everywhere I went, except maybe the ocean, but then you have slaughterfish, which are the sea versions of Cliff Racers. All my homies hate Cliff Racer shirts, now available in my merch shop, link in the description. Outside going all Denzel Crocker about Cliff Racers, Dungeons and Morrowind are fine. I mean, the Elder Scrolls has never really had a great track record with dungeons. There are a lot of family tombs, I can tell you that, which are essentially just hallways that lead to one big room in a catacomb. Some Daedra ruins and some Dwemer ruins, but I never really explored those all that much. Darrodraw's story didn't really require it. The ones I did explore are cute but basic, and honestly, I'm fine with that. Morrowind's environments are pretty, and its natural world building is something the Elder Scrolls series as a whole has become known for. I loved the little mini stories I can find, like a Nord who got cursed by a witch to stand still naked in one spot. Sir, where are your clothes? A noble pilgrim who got kidnapped while he was on his pilgrimage, and a woman held hostage in a tower. It's these little things that always made every NPC worth talking to in Skyrim, and it all started here in Morrowind. Nearly every NPC has their own little story and background. In fact, you can downright ask most of them about it, what their trade is or how they live out their days. There's also far more to experience in the game with factions. Looking back on my time with Skyrim over the years, the dull thief fighter, assassin's mage, and red versus blue style faction quests have always been one of the more boring parts of the game. Oftentimes I have to suspend my disbelief heavily to carry out my character's story within them, and I was oftentimes wishing for more disposition and faction diversity. Thankfully, Morrowind answers this call quite well. The three houses, as well as various other factions like the East Empire Company, the Imperial Cult, and more, are available for the player to join, rise through the ranks of, and build their story with. Some factions actively clash with each other as well, locking you out of other factions, which is something I wish had happened more in Skyrim. Playing through this game and thinking of my future playthroughs has left me wishing so much more for Skyrim in terms of character building, not in the literal skill sense, but in the way of building their life and story. While Darrodraw's story ended up with her becoming the leader of the Morag Tong, I can continue it at any time. Perhaps she wishes a bigger rise to power. I can see her convincing herself to join one of the houses, have her hand in the pies of the early East Empire Company, and more. This isn't to bash Skyrim and its lack of choices. This is just kind of talking about how Morrowind introduced a lot of great concepts that I'm really sad didn't make it to later games, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when I do get to Skyrim in a couple of videos. There is so much more to be done in Morrowind, and a character story can be never endless. It's all so damn good. But fuck Cliff Racers. Chapter 3, spam left click and win. I don't ever want to hear someone try and compare the complexity of Skyrim's combat to Morrowind's ever again. I cannot believe I sat here for years listening to you assholes try and tell me Skyrim's combat sucked because it wasn't as deep and complex as Morrowind's. What the actual fuck are you talking about? Here's how you win a fight in Morrowind. Draw your weapon and then hammer your left click button as fast as you can until the enemy falls over. If you're running low on health, hit tab, chug some potions, and if you're really having issues, make sure you stock up on scrolls and offensive spells, and that's it. There's no blocking. Dodging can play a factor, but the enemy kind of locks onto you no matter what, and they're very, very fast. There was a couple of times I would try to back away from a fight so that I could take some time to heal really quickly, and yeah, you just really didn't get that option because they would just close the gap on you. If you're trying to dodge fling spells, then it requires really precise timing, and even then, it still doesn't always matter because some spells auto-lock onto the target, which is really fucking frustrating. There is one major factor in combat that a lot of people claim makes it far more complex than Skyrim's combat, but it's not really in your control, and I think that complexity outside of your control isn't complexity worth bragging about in a sense, but we'll get to that in a second. Morrowind is still holding on to that Dungeons and Dragons logic that started all the way back in Arena. Every time you swing a blade, shoot a spell, let fly an arrow, the game rolls a dice in the background, and whether or not you hit is based off a combination of your luck stat and whichever stat is tied to the method of the attack you are using, as well as how much fatigue you currently have during the fight. Speed can let you swing your weapons faster or knock an arrow faster, but all that really means is you're getting more opportunities to attempt the strike, and it can get rather annoying when you let loose 12 arrows at the face of a fucking cliff racer point blank from you, and none of them have hit while they have taken half your fucking health bar out to a chorus of annoying chirps and clinks. With this in mind, combat often devolves into panicked screams and pleas for the game to just let you land that last sliver of health on the enemy before it manages to kill you, all the while jumping around the battlefield hoping that does something to help you. Even something like the block function isn't actually in your control. Whether or not a block with a shield happens is based on another random luck factor. I don't hate this system as much as I thought I would, because as you grow stronger and more proficient in your skills, you actively see that play out. As hits land more often, do more damage, blocks happen more often, you avoid more hits than your opponents can land, etc., etc. It's kind of odd to be in this position because all my time watching analysis videos, anytime someone would mention the RNG combat and an action-based combat system, it would annoy me. In Dungeons and Dragons, the roll to hit is to maintain balance and also play at your imagination. Missing on an attack roll doesn't necessarily mean you hit thin air. It can mean your enemy dodged or parried, your sword clanged off of the knight's armor, or maybe your stance was slightly off to allow for a perfect block. Maybe you actually connected with the flesh of the monstrous orc, but your swing wasn't quite hard enough, so it did nothing to the tough skin. In video games, we don't need any of that imagination. We can see the enemy dodge, block, parry, or whatnot. We cannot have blood splatter on the orc. We can add the cling for the armor. I've always believed in an action combat system, you need to just have the hit land, even if it doesn't do damage, as long as the model connects. I think that's something that Patrician TV brought up in his Morrowind analysis would have helped a lot, and that would have been a combat log. If there would have been something on the screen to let you know what was actually happening while you were missing or not doing damage or whatever the case may be, then it would have been a lot more digestible. I'm not saying that this makes the combat bad, but what I am saying is that it makes it very off-putting to players. Players feeling like they don't have any control over whether or not they're going to win the combat, or that they have very little control over whether or not they're going to win the combat, feels really bad. What I will say is that there is still some technical skill in it. You still have to make the model connect in order to hopefully make the hit land. But then again, you don't actually have to make the models connect. You just have to swing in their direction and be close enough for the reach of the weapon to hit them. That being said, I think it's very important to understand that Morrowind's combat system was made out of technical limitations, but it is still a little bit disconnected. But the more I looked over the RNGesus aspect of combat, the more I was kind of grateful for it. It made the growth of Darrow Draw that much more appealing and impressive. I felt her skills grow as opposed to just seeing them. That's not saying that I ever want RNG combat to make a recurrence. I think it's a horribly outdated mechanic that we no longer need, but I do appreciate it in Morrowind for what it is. So all of this being said, that does seem to make Morrowind's combat more complex than Skyrim's. But Skyrim's combat isn't more complex than Morrowind's, and it's not less complex either. There's a lot that goes on in Skyrim's combat system that a lot of people gloss over because, just like in Morrowind, what I did, a lot of people just tend to spam left click or right click and hope that they land their blows. There's a lot more to it and a lot more that can be done with it. And no, I'm not talking about turning Skyrim into Dark Souls through mods, which has always been a stupid argument to me. I think that overall, Elder Scrolls combat has never been good per se, but it's never really been bad either, but never great. It served its purpose, and while there are strategies in the combat system, even Skyrim's, there's one major thing Morrowind has over all the other Elder Scrolls games that I've played, and that's magic. I am convinced, in my heart of hearts, that Morrowind is impossible to beat without magic. Magic is the crux of everything. You'll never find a good weapon that's not enchanted. Your armor, no matter how high the rating, won't do as much without enchantment. Spells that make traveling easier and faster are mandatory, and it's magic scrolls that get you out of tough situations every time. I was appalled the first time I summoned a Frost Atronach off a random scroll I bought, and it cleared out an entire room of enemies without even flinching. Even people in my chat chat who have beaten this game many times were saying how they had never even attempted to beat Morrowind without its magic because it's so goddamn busted. Magic is the stealth archer of Morrowind. It's so goddamn powerful that my original plan was to only use invisibility for Darrow Draw, but I ended up hoarding scrolls and paralysis weapons and traversal spells, and it just all made my life way easier. There is an enchanting and spell-making system in the game. I didn't use them because I never needed to, as the game tends to shower you with magic items at every turn, but I've heard good things about them, so I'll leave it at that for now. Chapter 4! Busy work. I almost did not have this section in the script, as it almost felt like needless nitpicking in an otherwise fantastic game. But as I've said in the past, I consider myself to be an honest reviewer, and to that end, let's talk about some of the minor little niggles that annoy me and tend to pile up as the time goes on throughout the playthrough. The biggest nit I wish to pick is the weapon degradation. Now, I was pretty on the nose about repairing my weapons as an assassin thief character. I was constantly sitting on a king's ransom of gold, and repair hammers are relatively cheap, so every so often I'd stop in town, hit up the local smiths, armorers, and weaponers, buy all their hammers, and then, when as needed, I would sit there and spam left click until all my equipment was repaired. The reason I hate this as much as I do is that, in the end, it's needless busy work. I hate weapon degradation in general, always found it to be an unnecessary and really weighs down any game it's ever been in. The way around this mechanic is normally weighing you down with mountains of additional equipment, and Morrowind is no different. I can see it working in a hardcore survival type game where your equipment constantly being on the verge of breaking is an additional threat in whatever harsh situation the game puts you in, coupled with the hunger and rest mechanics even. But in Morrowind it serves little purpose. Most equipment has an obnoxious amount of durability, so even lower level poor characters won't have an issue stopping every once in a while to repair. The idea behind it is your weapons become less effective and you can break even completely as durability drains, eventually reaching zero. But the flip side of that is you'd have to not be paying attention for hours at a time for that risk to even be a factor. In that case, why even have such an asinine system? Another problem I have, and this was an issue in Skyrim as well, is gold limits in shops. Look, I get it. It's more realistic to not be able to stop at your local smith, sell off the 13 enchanted swords laying in your back pocket for the monetary equivalent of Dubai, and then ride off into the sunset to collect more junk to do it again. But Morrowind's merchants are truly some broke bitches. Darrow Draw was a stealth assassin specializing in short blade weapons and bows. I had no need for countless high-cost long swords, axes, and hammers I kept finding, but some of them sold for thousands of coin, and it got to a point where I would purposely lowball myself by over 75% of the weapon's selling costs just to get rid of the fucking things. At one point I started throwing all my random shit into a chest in the Morag Tong because I couldn't be asked to travel around looking for a merchant that had more than 500 to 600 gold on them. I found out from a chatter there is a place to sell the super expensive shit, but apparently, according to them, the route to get to it isn't worth the reward of being there, and I know nothing more than that, and I don't wish to dig any deeper. Third, being staggered. No, don't run now, motherfucker! I got your ass now! I was going to put this in the combat section, but might as well throw it here. So in combat, sometimes with a power attack or a fully charged marksman shot, you can stagger the enemies, and they can stagger you back. This is fine and adds another layer to the otherwise boring combat. My issue is, if I'm getting beat on and I need to swap to a healing spell or even swap weapons, then the stagger can interrupt that swap, causing me to panic hammer the button and locking me into an endless loop of utter helplessness where I'm just getting beat on like a teenage boy's dick when he finds out porn is free on his phone. The secondary issue that I have is being knocked down. Some enemies can straight knock you to the ground with basically every hit they throw, which leads to more endless loops of being ass blasted by whatever is in the surrounding area. I'm not saying you shouldn't have incapacitations and staggers. I'm saying letting the enemy do it over and over and over and over again is the equivalent of those fucking paralysis attacks in Arena and Daggerfall. And yes, the paralysis bullshit is still here, but I made sure to load up on cure paralysis every chance I got, so suck my freshly beaten dick, Bethesda. And before we get to the last topic of this section, it wouldn't be a Bethesda video without mentioning the bugs. Arena and Daggerfall had their fair share of them, mostly enemies glitching in the walls and hitting you from impossible distances, or quest logs completely vanishing into the ether. But in Morrowind, boy, are they aplenty. The floor loses collision randomly was the most common one I encountered. What? What the fuck? Why? But there were other ones, like NPCs randomly becoming hostile,
This is pointless. Give in.
Why? What are you hitting me? Why? Why? What are you doing? Why am I being... What the fuck? Or quest lines simply not updating in the journal. One of the most common bugs that I ended up running into was actually getting stuck on random bits of railing and rope. I would try to jump over a place to get to the lower area, and I would just get stuck in mid-air with my character's arm straight up in the air as they're in this completely endless falling animation. And only through enough spam of the shift button, WASD, and jump would I eventually get free. And sometimes I'd have to actually reload to the last save to get out of the stuck place. Like most Bethesda games, there are unofficial and official patches that fix most of these, but as with every game I review, I opted to run the rawest version that I could find, that being the Game of the Year version on Steam, so I can get an unedited experience of the game. In my current offline playthrough, I've run into a bug with being an orc, where after your berserk ends, your fatigue drops to an absurd negative number like 500, and your character falls to the ground unable to move until the 60 seconds has passed and the effect of the berserk wears off. One major bug that royally pissed me off was during one of my many crime sprees, I got caught and had to pay off my bounty. In my inventory were 2 items with the same name, Fiend Tonto. It was an enchanted blade that, when I cast the spell, cast Bound Dagger on me and gave me a shield of shock for a few seconds. It was by far my best weapon on me because the Bound Dagger is the same damage as a Daedric Dagger, and it cut through enemies like hot butter. Well, somewhere in my journey, I found a second one in a chest in the house of an assassination target. Evidently, the second one was tagged as stolen, but because Bethesda code is essentially one giant ball of yarn, both of my Tontos got confiscated right before the big slaying of the Night Mother of the Dark Brotherhood. This significantly weakened my character for no other reason than the fact that the game couldn't properly identify which Tonto had been found in a dungeon and which Tonto had been found in the chest. Finally, let's talk about resting. I, on several fundamental levels, enjoy the way resting works in the game. In order to take advantage of your level up and put more points into your attributes, you must rest when the game prompts you, and I like this a lot. It's something that enhances the game and gives you a reason to actually rest. You also do not passively gain health. It's only something that comes back through rest or items and spells. My problem is how arbitrary resting is. You can only rest in a bed if you are in town, which is fine, but what counts as a town is somewhat vague. You could be miles outside of town with it not even being in your draw distance and still get the "resting here is illegal, you'll have to find a bed" message just for you to finally get out of range and get the "can't rest when enemies are around." Sometimes when you finally find that sweet spot, your rest gets interrupted, normally by an assassin, and that's another thing. From the very first time you rest, at every rest has a chance to spawn an assassin. These bastards are hard as hell to kill and will often lead to you reloading the autosave started by the resting to try resting again, and they never fucking go away. I killed the Dark Brotherhood's Night Mother, became the leader of the Morag Tong, and they still kept spawning. I don't know if this is a bug, but it was so infuriating to wake up and constantly be overrun by these fucking guys. Later in the game, I could handle them fairly well, and my first kill on one of them did net me armor I used for the rest of Darrow Draw's playthrough because there was legit nothing better in over 20 hours of playing outside of the Savior's Hide. But still, they were a nuisance I couldn't get rid of. Although, looking back, there was a quest to go report them to some dude in Ebonheart. Might have to do that on my Warrior playthrough. Hey, Postscript Kaiser here, again. After watching through Patrician TV's Morrowind analysis, I did discover that they are part of a quest, and you can get rid of them, but they're part of a DLC quest, which came with the Game of the Year edition, which I didn't know. The unfortunate circumstance of this is that the assassins should not be showing up so early in the game. Trying to get the player to go on this asinine quest from the very first offshoot is just really bad implementation of DLC, and this is a trend that actually continues through Oblivion and into Skyrim. I'll get to that when I do the videos on both of those, but this is really obnoxious, and I cannot fucking stand it. Chapter 5. Conclusion. I didn't do the main story quest. This is typical of me. It actually took me years before I finished Skyrim's main quest, and even then I've still only done it once and don't really want to do it again. And it probably won't take me that long for Morrowind. I'll probably do it on a Paladin playthrough, but the reason I bring it up is even without the main quest line, I can't recommend Morrowind enough. I know that I did a lot of bitching in this video, but that's only because I just want you guys to understand some of the complexities that come with having a great game that also has a lot of bad to it. That being said, Morrowind is still one of the best games that I've ever played. Only in an Elder Scrolls game can I have over 20 hours on record, accomplish so much, experience vast amounts of the world, and still only scratch the surface of what it has to offer. Morrowind was the answer I was looking for when I started this series, whether or not Skyrim was the only game in the series I'd like, or am I an overall fan of the series as a whole. And Morrowind has shown me all the things that I loved about Skyrim are here, present in even older entries in the series, and more. I loved Morrowind with every part of me. I was addicted. I never wanted to sleep because I just wanted to play more. I'm gonna play more. I have been playing more since I wrote this script, and after this video goes live, you can bet that I'm going to be playing offline. It's not leaving my Steam library, and it will stay in my constant rotation of games that I play while I watch video essays or attempt to escape from the harshness of the real world. My only regret was I never got to play it sooner, and the fact that if I had done my other 2 playthroughs I had planned before I started this video, I know I could fill up probably hours of your time is a testament to the greatness of this game. Do I like Morrowind better than Skyrim? That's hard to say. It's a question I'm not ready to answer yet. But what I do know is Morrowind is one of the greatest games I've ever played. But we still have Oblivion left. Thank you for watching. This script underwent probably about 3 different rewrites in the time since I finished Morrowind. I kept thinking that I was done, and then I started adding more. The entirety of chapter 4 was created after the script had already been finished, recorded, and I was halfway through editing. I actually went back and added it because there was just so much more to talk about. I could not believe how much I loved this game. It's just fantastic. I enjoy this game with every fiber of my being, and I think that in all honesty, in complete and utter honesty, I believe that this game is one of the greatest ever made, and I enjoyed it so much. I finally see what people are talking about when they say it's one of, it's their favorite Elder Scrolls game. I can't wait to get to the end of this series so I can do like a full analysis comparison of all 5 games. It's just been really fun. But as always, I did want to give a quick thank you and a shout out to my channel members, Nuclear Bomb, Gamer Geek, Peter RJ, and Spirit Upgrades for their additional support. If you want to find out how to become a channel member for as little as $2 a month and help support the channel, then please click that join button down below. Other than that, I love you guys so much, and I will see you in Oblivion.